All right, we get a new best of 3. This was from the Open Cup. Oh gosh, I want to say North America. I think this was the round of 4 as well. So in the bottom left of Data C, it is herO. And in the top right, as the red Protoss, it is Skillous. So we do have a PvP on the new maps, which is actually a pretty nice matchup to watch new maps on, because there is a lot of, I guess, things that impact the early stages of this matchup when it comes to map design, right? Like literally, case in point, it's going to be, do you actually try to get that low ground expansion, or do you just try and stick up on the high ground? 2 gate versus 1 gate, you know the drill. Generally, the idea is basically that if there's a ramp leading up to your natural, then you're good to go as far as the expansion goes. But that was kind of in flux for the last map pool. Pride of Alteris was like, yeah, 100%. And then it was like, well, I don't know. So I think it's going to be in flux here. And I just think that because this is such a late entry map pool when it comes to competition, literally putting the Open Cups on a new map pool only last week, and then having, the potential play on the custom, sure, if you actually organize things, okay. But anyways, like, there's no one that's going to be figuring it out, and then a bunch of people aren't going to be just following it stylistically. Until usually, I would say, like, 2 weeks, you might see some influence. Like, the one guy kind of shows the way. Everyone's like, yeah, I agree on that. And then 2-3 weeks after the new map pool, like, everyone's doing roughly the same thing. You know what I mean? We're just not going to have that. It's so sparse, and these players are still going to find that laddering is the easiest, less, without any friction tool to actually get play in. So there's going to still be a lot of people who are probably spending most of their time, whether they want to or not, playing on the old maps and only being able to play on the new maps very infrequently. Leading up to DreamHack, which literally starts in a couple of days from the recording of this video. So anyways, we had a proxy pylon from herO, but it is a fake. He's not actually going to do anything with it. Skillous has to take it very seriously. He's going to go look for it by the looks of things. Yeah. That's another thing that's going to happen with new maps. You're not exactly going to know where the common proxy locations are. You can kind of figure it out. Like Skillous here is going to go over to the right side. And eventually, we'll see this pylon. Goes to the Xel'Naga first and then around. Okay, well, either way, he'll eventually see it, and he'll see that it's not anything dangerous. So it's still information, even if it is quite delayed. But Skillous already got his Nexus finished, now working on a Stargate, so played, kind of fast and loose with this build. This could have been way worse, but Skillous trusted his gut, I suppose. Went for the Nexus anyways. Because if you were very suspicious of what your opponent was doing, as the Nexus guy, you could go for a Stargate first and then the Nexus, but I believe this was the opposite. But yeah, you can kind of figure things out as far as the proxies go. If this was a TVP, where would a Terran put their starport? Probably right here. So they could instantly jump over into your main base. That's logical. But there's a lot of nuance and things you don't necessarily think of until you play the game in terms of how your probe is going to move through all of the low ground, high ground situations, what the Xel'Naga actually covers, kind of like those things. It just takes reps to really figure out. So no one's quite there yet, even though I'm sure many of these players, especially the ones who are 100% attending DreamHack Valencia, have been trying their best to put in the time, put in the custom games, or even just simply look at the map and try and kind of figure things out mentally, how it's going to go. A very non-aggressive PvP so far, by the way. herO is behind. He did not get as fast of a Nexus, so he's behind 5 workers, and then didn't do anything to try and make up for that. Actually went for a very safe opener with Stalker Sentry, I believe. They even tried to do anything with the depths, which, yeah, probably would have failed, but yeah, didn't even try. No proxy that was actually threatening. I guess I said no 2 Adepts, but he eventually made 2 Adepts. We'll see if this works. The kind of later Adepts maybe having more of a chance than the very easy to scout first 2 Adepts. Oh, look at that. Yeah, exactly that. Skillous was trying to pay attention to something like this. Still had the probe on patrol, but you look a different direction. Boom, there they go. Oh, a little mistiming on the shots, so only 4 probes instead of 5, and then even then, That's not the worst. That would have made up for herO's deficits, but then these oracles swoop in. They were denied in the natural, kind of snuck their way into the main base, and now have done more probe damage. So Skillous continues to hold a comfortable lead in that regard. The army supply might look a little sus, but it's really not. Trying to break a Protoss who's still on 2 bases when you only have, well, now 4 army supply lead. Like, that's not anything, is it? So Skillous has more workers, has had more workers, is going to have +1. His blink is later, so getting this 3rd base up might be risky in the sense that he's going to play it very carefully. Not that it's depending on herO not punishing it. It just is got to be careful. And herO did just scout that. But yeah, he's behind on the blink and then behind on the actual 3rd nexus. With herO with the faster blink, this is kind of your birthright, your blink right, is to get the faster 3rd nexus. And then as far as punishing Skillouses, that does mean that herO would have to warp in continuously, and then even kind of find Skillous not necessarily in position prepared to defend it, and then maybe you can get a cheeky cancel, but even that's not going to happen. herO clearly just waiting at home, playing still very defensive, which is going to put him in a deficit. He's straight up behind in this game. This faster 3rd nexus even isn't that much faster. He's still been behind 4 or 5 workers for all of this PvP, and is about 50 seconds behind on that +1. So while blink is not done for Skillous, and that was almost awkward, that +1 is way more important now. We're moving on to the next stage. We're moving on to the macro game. Having that +1 leads to a faster +2, and while maybe +3 doesn't come out depending on how the game goes, the point is you still have that upgrade lead pretty much for sure in a PvP like this. And the 2 oracles still being active is also a real bummer. 5 more probes go down. Oracle is still not punished. 1 getting into the red but not killed. And Skillous, he's in full control of this game. It's actually kind of surprising to see that he's not already substantially ahead in the supply count, like 20 supply ahead in the supply count, just because of how long he's had this economic lead. But it is just still being invested. I think when we see Skillous, stop building probes, finish up his charge and +2, then starts warping in continuously, that's when we'll see probably a 20 or 30 supply lead for Skillous. That is a guess. It'd be really awesome if I was correct. It'd look really smart. Skillous? That's a very dangerous thing to do. So he saw this pylon, he knew where it was, but it's still very far away. It leaves his 3rd base a little open, which, I mean, this could have been punished. The shield battery wasn't done, so if he recalled, it would be too late. The shield battery would have been focus fired. But herO did take his own time getting across the map, so, well, that maybe could have been an opportunity. It would have been a very, very coincidental opportunity, I suppose. And the Oracle see a faster 4th base as well. So Skillous, I gotta expect him just to go 4 or 3 base +2 attack. I mean, it seems like this is exactly the type of game where this would work. Nothing has even impeded your attempt to do this. It's not like you're like, oh, well, I lost 15 probes in the early game, and, well, I don't know if it's going to work anymore. I'm kind of desperate. No, this actually lined up almost perfectly. They've done pretty much equal damage to their probes, but then one person just had more probes to begin with, so it should still be in Skillous's favor. And that +2 is going to be a hell of a thing, but Shield Body Overcharge also hell of a thing. Good to see some of the terrain in action. Gonna break down these rocks. Let what is probably gonna be the next round of Zealot warp-ins actually do their job. And this is not that supply lead that I was expecting. herO's been able to keep up with it. But what is he missing? Just that +2. Oh, and he didn't actually... Okay, so he's also down 2 gases. That has made up a little bit for the economic differences, which means he will be relying more so on charge lot warp-ins, which might sound okay, and they are when they're in fairly large numbers, but the smaller numbers they are, the more they're quite desperately being thrown at the Blinkstalker opponent, the more the Blinkstalkers do just micro away from them. And they actually seem kind of useless. Maybe not totally useless, but kind of useless. So you can see here that while that started off with an even supply, those Zealots really weren't as impactful. That +2 really did kick in. And herO, he still got his Shield Body Overcharge in his back pocket, I believe. This just seems like too much. Skillous, yeah, now even blinking aggressively forward, brings in a couple of Zealots, but has been having so much success with these Stalkers. Just continue microing, really, and there is a huge supply lead now. So, okay. Gotta consider those gases, I suppose. GG. Just gonna check real quick on what the income actually ended up being. I think if herO had tried to take the same amount of gases, because this is... I mean, does income advantage actually do combo, like, gas and minerals? I would assume it was just minerals. But anyways, I feel like it would have been even worse on the mineral front. But herO tried to kind of make up for it a little bit. But that gave him charge lots over stalkers. And, you know, obviously no way to get into Archons with that much gas. But alright, so Skillous does just play this out to the end, basically. Doesn't let anything get lost along the way. And finds himself up 1-0 against herO. Let's move into game 2. It'd be funny, cool if hallucinations actually drain Protoss shields so they have... as they have to activate? As they have to... I am jet lagged and it's in the morning, but I don't quite understand what that would be. That means. You gotta see the shields activate when they get hit. Oh, you mean like the graphical thing? Interesting. Don't they? Or is that another way to tell that they don't, that they're a hallucination? Alright. Game number 2 between Skillous and herO. Now on Tropical Sacrifice. Top right, herO. Bottom left, Skillous. Tropical Sacrifice being... I mean, I think one of the more chosen maps so far. Data C also has been chosen, I guess, a couple times. I feel like I've seen this one quite a bit. Maybe that's biased to the matchups that I have been able to witness so far on the new maps. But anyways, what I've gathered from this map is that it is a map that splits itself kind of down this diagonal line right here. As you don't have as many, I feel like, shared possible bases. A lot of your, well, basically 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of, I mean, like even these bases, right? This one, and this one, this pocket one, all would be firmly considered Skillous's. Whereas I think there's other maps where there's one kind of more in the middle, like here, exactly here, that would be like, well, you know, it's going to be like, Blackburn has one literally 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and you're like, well, depends on who's in what position to actually grab that. Anyways, that's the only thing I can really determine so far. My thoughts on the map. It divides itself, but that doesn't necessarily mean very much if we're talking about an early or mid game. The other thing about the map is that it is rather large. There's a lot of space to walk through. And then when you consider that you do not have a lot of bases that are pushed forward initially, so natural, third, and fourth base are really quite far back and expanding towards your opponent, really in any way, shape, or form on this map. It does seem like it kind of does lead to a macro game. Then you also have the natural ramp as a little bit of safety, and in this matchup does boost the chances, anyways, of it being a gateway expands. Now, Skillous is doing it. herO is doing it as well. He did not last game, and he did pay a price for it. He was consistently behind. Now, in a game of StarCraft, so many things happen. So many things happen that even when it starts off a little behind, you kind of just assume that things are going to work out differently so that it levels out or even flips. And then there's multiple chances over the StarCraft game where that happens. But the longer that it doesn't happen, the more drastic that flip has to be from the guy who's fallen behind. And in PvP, I also want to say that it's extremely likely that herO could have gotten something. His adepts do kill 7 probes, and then the oracles don't do any damage. But that just never happened. Anything he did, he got back in return, and he was just straight up behind. So I would say that's kind of a rarity in PvP professional games, especially with a guy like herO who's just kind of erratic. But that's the way it went. So kind of a dull game, actually, overall, if you really want to be truthful. We'll see what happens in a game like this, where herO has done a little bit more to really mess things up. The pylon block, but then the additional cybernetics core block as well. Adept gets in first. Of course, got a 2-shot, but still 2 probes, and the Adept escapes. Pretty damn good. No, actually did not escape, but still 2 probes for an Adept, that's fine. And the Adept also got maybe a little bit of scouting, but not that she really had to. You see the Stargate right at the front, don't you? 2 Stalkers trying to guard the Oracle's life. This is one of the fascinating things about natural expand and natural expand. Stargate to Stargate, which almost, I'd say all 1-gate expands in PvP lead to, is that the Phoenix are supposedly better than the Oracle, but only if they catch the Oracle. And case in point, they did not catch the Oracle. This 3rd Phoenix is going to try. I was really surprised. So if the Oracle actually just went to the main, it would have been able to catch some probes. But 2 things happened. 1, Skillous probably expected the Phoenix to be waiting in the main base, so kind of wanted to meander around it. And then 2, the shield battery was finishing up basically in the nick of time. So it didn't really work out. And now Skillous is trying to basically play the Bamboozler. Wanted to probably not have this scouted as fast as it was. Or we actually had the means to defend it, but having the means to defend it's really difficult to do when your opponent is building so close to it and then has such good scouting units like Phoenix. But if the Oracles had successfully distracted the Phoenix, they're running around to the first Oracle, they get that one, then the second Oracle pops up, they get that one. Yeah, I guess maybe it is possible this ever gets figured out, or it does, but then there's not enough units to actually kill it when Skillous tries to defend it. Like, a lot of those things could have happened, I suppose, but the way that it looked made Skillous look kind of silly. You're like, well, why did you think that was going to work? And I think it could have, but just need these Oracles to be a little bit more of a distraction. Now, butting up the Oracles, going to be able to get 4 probes with a damage, 5, 6. Just going to sack them, actually, hoping to do enough damage, but then, no, it doesn't actually click correctly. Could have been 9 or 10 probes, I want to say, if the Oracles had consistently shot at them. And then the natural still looks well protected to me. Even if 10 probes had gone down, herO is only down 4 or 5, but still has an entire Nexus, 2 shield batteries, Stargate pumping out units, and you can see just how one-sided that fight was. All right, very, very quick one compared to the last, and Skillous' aggression just simply does not pan out. Really needed things to kind of lead to another. One thing leads to another in this game with the Oracles. Oracle number 1 does a little bit of damage. herO goes, oops-a-daisy, let me take care of that. Oracle number 2 comes in, comboed probably because the recall still happens. And then herO goes, oh, whoops-a-daisy, let me go deal with that. And then this attack with the Stalkers and the Proxy Gateway hits 30 seconds faster. And then that's a real scary defense for herO. But if those things don't happen, it looks super simple. So let's move on to game 3. Game 3 will be on Waterfall, which does have a waterfall. 2 of them, I guess. And is, I think, one of the shorter maps. Top right is herO, bottom left is Skillous. I want to say it was one of the shorter maps, but I actually can't quite remember. Unfortunately, this map pool doesn't have the alphabetical order of rush distances that we had. We had a map pool that did that 3 or 4 map pools ago. It was great. Super easy. And also, I had to do my own research when it came to the rush distances, which you think would actually help it keep it in my brain, but that my brain don't work so good anyways right now. But I did do it. I figured out the rush distances, and then I put them on the Wikipedia. I'm gonna get credit for that. I'm gonna force people to give credit. They're gonna be like, oh, that's cool, ZombieGrub, that's nice. And I'm gonna be like, more. More what? More credit. Oh, that's really, really nice of you. More. But yeah, it's annoying. I don't know why they didn't put the rush distance on like they've done for the past year plus. Because to be fair, they used to not do it. And so I remember doing that for a map pool, I think 2+ years ago. Maybe the one for Katowice, honestly. don't quite remember. Katowice 2020. But then they started doing it. They started putting rush distances on Wikipedia. And I was like, oh, great, this is so much easier. And then they didn't do it for this map pool. And I think it maybe has to do with it not being on the ladder, maybe. But then what I also noticed was that I think the last TLMC, they put it as part of the description of the maps on like the TL post. And I didn't see that this time around. So like either they thought no one cared or they just forgot, which is fair enough. Both are fair enough, honestly. Saw Pig referring to the rush distance on Wikipedia. If you've seen anyone refer to the rush distances, you better tell them to credit ZombieGrub, okay? Especially if it's another commentator, okay? Because these guys, one, don't do that themselves. Two, even when it was available on Wikipedia without my help, they would still ask to see my notebook. I helped solve an argument in Katowice 2020. That was a very short-lived argument, but nonetheless was kind of funny. Between, I think, Rotterdam and maybe Pig? Maybe it was Pig again. Rotterdam and someone, because I remember Rotterdam ended up being in the wrong. And he was like, hey, can I see your notebook? And he looked at it and he's like, oh, okay, it is shorter. People make fun of the notebook until they need the notebook. Every school nerd would agree with that. And I was not a school nerd, but apparently now I'm a StarCraft nerd. Apparently I'm that type of person in StarCraft. It's so weird. Anyways, herO once again tried to go for the extended block on Skillous' Nexus. And by tried, I do mean he was successful to an extent. Just maybe not as, you know, as long as it could have been, I suppose. But when you get it, you actually get the Zealot, then it's not supposed to last that long. The real GG moment is if you think herO was going to fake it, so you don't get the Zealot, and then he puts the S7 X core, and then you're pretty screwed. But herO's also going for a similar opener as far as the Stargate action goes. So he either thinks that Skillous is once again going to try and bamboozle him based off the scouting, or just figured that it worked out really well. But the Oracle of herO is already doing so much damage. That was so much, actually. Okay, there's a couple things happening. This is... It's interesting. So Void Ray pops out. A second Void Ray gets chronoed. I mean, again, he didn't actually see that this was a Nexus, but then he saw a Twilight Council and a 4 and a Gateway, sorry. I don't... Okay. Alright, let's just go with the flow right now. Oracle from Skillous was not doing anything initially because the shield battery was covering it. Actually burned through the shield battery energy and no overcharge was available, so 9 probes were killed. And then this Zealot gets in, just walks in, nothing to block it, and then gets a couple more probes. So Skillous, despite having that much later Nexus, and then also having his own damage to herO's Oracle, like he's still gonna come out ahead by about 6 workers. That's actually crazy. And I think herO just got very unfortunate with the timing of that shield battery overcharge. Because I figured that would have saved his bacon, right? And then he also... Well, I guess the other thing was that he went for Void Rays instead of Phoenix. Which, a little pricier and slower to build. Even slower than they used to be, right? So if the Phoenix had been there a bit faster, it probably catches the Oracle before it pierces through the shield battery. Well, anyways, we're all tied up in action, hard to analyze during it, says herO just races across the map with the units that he has, and is like, yeah, what are you gonna do about it? Well, you don't have to do very much, honestly. The pylon being taken out does make this more awkward than you would expect, but there's not actually that much firepower on 2 Void Rays, or rather, they're glass cannons. There's a lot of firepower, but they're also gonna be taken down pretty easily. They really need shield batteries to actually make them quite good. So Skillous just biding his time here, brings back his Phoenix, catches herO's Phoenix, which is kind of cute, still saving his Phoenix, way to be a great Phoenix dad, and then is just slowly warping in 1 stalker at a time. And that is the only reason this was awkward. If this second Gateway had been able to pump out units as well, this entire time, those Void Rays pulled back a long time ago. But even though they took a while to pull back, even though there was that awkward delay, the Nexus couldn't actually mine in the natural, Skillous still finds himself ahead. Now his Oracle gets caught out, so no freebie damage in that natural, which he easily would have gotten 3 or 4. But he's still ahead by 4 probes. And those 2 Void Rays are gonna get worthless. It's harsh, okay. I'm gonna say they're gonna get worse over time. They're not gonna get worthless, they're gonna get worse over time. But they absolutely are. They're not going to be a part of a staple PvP diet. They are the I don't know, Captain Crunch cereal, which they say is useful. Some very misinformed people say that it's healthy. And then the real knowledgeable people know that Avoid Ray is not a sustainable diet. Flame Stalkers being a little bit bold, but they get a couple of probes. They pop in overcharge in the main base. They kill a Void Ray. Skillous' Oracle comes back in during all of this distraction. Another Void Ray looking to be taken down. There's no shield by the overcharge this time around. And Skillous, he just pounces on it as well. Probes are being pulled into the situation. Well, that's a terrible sign. And the shield battery gets popped anyways. There is so little firepower coming out from herO right now. The probes really are being kind of MVPs currently. They're getting just enough shots soaked up, just enough damage done to the kind of remnants of the Stalker blinking that it looked like maybe a hold was possible, but then more Stalkers come in. The weakened Stalkers, while weak, are not getting killed, and there's no replacement shield battery. There's too few units in herO. They're just out of luck. He is down a bit over half the supply. Yeah, he has been broken. G freaking G. Skillous coming from across the map for those reinforcements, by the way. It started in here, but you might think, oh, well, that sucks. I'll be okay. It's still such a long distance. It doesn't have a proxy gateway. It doesn't have a warp prism. And maybe if it was a bigger map, that would be the case. But good old-fashioned warp-ins from across town managed to push herO overboard. GG. Skillous moves on to the finals, which will be our next cast as well. So I hope you guys will join me for the next video. And I'll see you there. Bye-bye.